Hello, this is Patty Lager, and had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but I'm back up, and this is the live Facebook question and answer session. So I just wanted to briefly go over a few things about my website and about the Human Anatomy and Physiology course that I'm offering to students going into natural health. Right now, the course is basically a full college-level human anatomy and physiology course. It's the same course I teach my students that are taking human anatomy and physiology with me at the college. And I want to offer that to people that are going into natural health field. Primarily, my target is those students that are are going to go into ISOD, the International School of Detoxification. I will also be teaching this April with Dr. Morse down in Florida at the Level 1 ISOD class. I've had a couple of conversations with people about what I'll be doing at ISOD, and then how does that relate to the online course. And they're different. Obviously, the online course is a full academic year of anatomy and physiology. And that's going to unfold because it's going to be more streamlined to natural healing. I want to teach natural ways of how anatomy and physiology is perceived by a natural health professional, as opposed to what a lot of traditional textbooks tend to do, is to go into pathophysiology or pathological states, and always pointing to how treatment is best done allopathically. So all I'm offering, and I think what Dr. Morse offers and many of the detoxification specialists that have gone through his training and are out there helping people heal, is that there is an alternative. There is an alternative to the treatment options that are currently highlighted as the only options. You know, if you go to the doctor and you're diagnosed with something, basically they tell you you have to do this, and then they kind of treat you like you don't know what you're talking about, or that you could not possibly know how to manage your own health. We need to empower people to understand how their human body works. This is information that should no longer be occulted. It should no longer be hidden. It's not for the chosen few that are out there wearing the white coats and the stethoscopes around their neck. This information about how the human body works is very simple. The Human Anatomy and Physiology course I teach, it might go into some detail, and I think that detail is nice to truly go into the understanding of how all of these different organelles in the cell work, how the different biochemical reactions in and out of the cell work. Also looking at the various organ systems, what do they do in the body? So we need to go into some in-depth discussion of these topics. But with that said, when we talk about healing and how Dr. Morse talks about healing, it's very simple. Healing really involves cleansing the body and getting back into a state of natural balance and homeostasis. That's the very first topic I talk about in my online A&P course. I talk about what is homeostasis. And the definition of homeostasis is basically keeping the body within stable internal levels, keeping things like body temperature close to 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius, keeping blood glucose levels between 70 and 110 milligrams of glucose per deciliter of blood. That's where we want to be. That's the homeostatic range that is optimal for the body. And the body's constantly trying to bring us back to homeostasis. Every organ system that we learn about in anatomy and physiology, we talk about what are the mechanisms that are involved in that organ system and helping to keep us in a state of balance, to keep us in a state where we can be, happy and healthy and doing vibrant activities out there, what we're meant to be doing as humans. As humans, there are many things we're not meant to do, and because we've been doing a lot of these activities, wrong living, if you will, we've gotten ourselves into a state that is pretty precarious. And that's why we see all of those symptoms. And symptoms are simply red flags. And as you all know from watching Dr. Morris's videos, and if some of you don't know who Dr. Morris is, Dr. Robert Morris, he is my personal mentor, and he has taught me so much. And he is a doctor, and doctor means teacher. That's what a true doctor does. They teach, and he has many, many, many amazing YouTube videos under his YouTube channel that he offers for free, helping people heal. People write into him, and he will answer questions on how it's so simple to bring the body back to a state of health. But really what he finds to be the foundational issue, the foundational cause for many of these symptoms, many of these red flags that are popping up, and letting the body, letting you know with your own body, know that something's not right, something's not in homeostasis. These symptoms are often due to lymphatic congestion. And the lymphatic system, as we learn about in my course, it's one thing that's kind of interesting. And there was a YouTube video I posted not too long ago that went into this. This is all on my YouTube channel. And the lymphatic system is discussed in anatomy and physiology, and all of the anatomy and physiology textbooks I've ever taught out of. And I've been teaching for many years, almost 20 years. I started teaching at the college level in 2002, and prior to that, as a graduate student, I was teaching as a graduate teaching assistant. So I've been teaching for a very long time. And the anatomy physiology courses that are books that I've taught out of, they very rarely highlight the lymphatic system. They mention that it's there. They mention that the lymphatic system is a system of vessels outside of the blood vessels. And one really quick, Walden, are you the Patty from the Free Your Mind podcast? Yes, I am. I was on the Free Your Mind podcast, and I was actually on Mark Passio's live Q&A hour after his live broadcast today. So you might have heard me there. Some of you might be here from hearing me on Mark Passio's channel. And yeah, with the Free Your Mind podcast, Bill Church and Rahul were co-hosts, and then Bill has carried on with that podcast, and he's doing a wonderful job. But yeah, that is me. But coming back to the root cause, what is the root cause for why people get these symptoms? And it comes back to lymphatic congestion, and the lymphatic system is not stressed enough in various organ systems. So, you know, in the textbook I have, and I should have brought one of my textbooks with me, but the textbooks that I teach out of, they show the one chapter on the lymphatic system, and that's when you learn that there's this system of vessels that are carrying excess fluid and waste products away from the tissue spaces. And then the textbook states that this fluid carrying all of this waste is just dumped right back into the blood. Right here, in fact, in the subclavian veins, which are right below your clavicles. That's where we're dumping all of this waste back into the blood. And if you think about it for a second, does it seem like a good idea that we're putting waste products, things that are acidic, the stuff that the body wants to get rid of, that we're dumping that back into this fluid that the body works so hard to maintain normal levels of various ions in, to maintain cleanliness in, to maintain a normal pH in. I mean, the blood pH must stay between 7.35 and 7.45, and if it goes out of that range, really bad things can happen. So that's the goal of the blood, and we're dumping this waste back into the blood. So that's what Dr. Morris teaches about the lymphatic system, and I have come up with an alternate route using some scientific research that I have personally found of how the kidneys, which logically seem like a better organ to remove this lymphatic waste as opposed to dumping it into the blood, but how the kidneys might be the direct route for removing this lymphatic waste. And working with Dr. Morris, we see evidence of this congestion coming out of the body when you are put on a healing protocol. And as a lot of you know, a healing protocol begins with a foundational diet, a diet rich in raw fruits and vegetables. Fruits are better at cleansing, especially the juicy raw fruits. and they will help to purge that congestion out of the tissue spaces, and then adding to that the herbs, herbal formulas that Dr. Morse promotes or that he sells from his clinic, or just if you look at the individual herbs, various herbs have been noted to help to strengthen and cleanse certain organs. And these herbs have been used by indigenous people for thousands of years as natural ways to heal. We've just made everything so complex in allopathic medicine, and that complexity has created confusion by the common folk. And when you go to a doctor, it seems like they have all of the knowledge, they have all of the information, and they're hiding it from you, and you just have to kind of sit back and do what they say. So that's one of the things, one of my goals is with my Human Anatomy and Physiology course, is to empower people to understand how their body works, and so that they can think logically how to heal it, and that you don't need all of these dangerous procedures just to simply help your body get back to homeostasis. So there are some people that are here, and I know that they had questions for me. Bianca is here. Hello, Bianca. How are you doing? I'm glad you can make it. And I know you had shared a question with me yesterday or maybe the day before. And if you're okay, I would like to address it now, if you're okay with that. And then hopefully I'll get to John after that. Hi, John. And Walden already popped in and again asked if I was on the Free Your Mind podcast, which I used to do that podcast a few years ago. So Bianca, I have your question. I'm going to pull it up really quick. And it's on the other page. One second. I think I'm having a hard time finding it. I think you had asked about teeth. And you had mentioned that the teeth seem to, you've been on a high fruit diet for many years, for a few years. Prior to that, many years vegan, which, that's amazing that you've been such a strong advocate for our animal friends on this planet. So, these diets are very cleansing, first and foremost. So when a person goes on a raw fruit diet, they will cleanse. And you'll see a lot of changes taking place in the body physiologically when you start to remove this lymphatic congestion out through the organs of elimination. So this is what the herbs help expedite. The herbs will help the kidneys strengthen, because the kidneys are the main organs of internal detoxification. The kidneys are removing those internal waste products from the tissue spaces. We've got the bowel wall, which can be a source of elimination, the skin, the lungs. So we want to open these organs up, help to release that which has been stuck inside of our tissue spaces. And when that stuff gets stuck into the tissue spaces, it creates inflammation. It creates, chronically tissue change, which could express itself as cells dividing rapidly. In allopathy, they call that a neoplasm, or the C word. It could express itself as loss of function, so an organ stops functioning optimally. It could express itself as ulceration, induration, where a tissue hardens. So there's a lot of different ways a tissue can respond when that congestive waste is stuck and it cannot be released. So coming back to Bianca's issue with her teeth. On the plus side, Bianca shared with me that she noted a lot of positive things with her skin. She noticed certain other changes that were, that were health promoting overall, but her teeth, the enamel of the teeth has kind of thinned out. So keep in mind that when we detox, and sometimes this journey of detoxification, it's not something that just can, within a few weeks, within a few months, can correct itself. Depending on our age, we've been on this planet for a long time, and even in utero, inside of the mother's uterus, when we were a fetus, we were, affected by the mother's diet, and then your mother's mother and her mother's mother. Everybody, the lines of the lines of your ancestors can all lead to what your current genetic expression is. And so we come into these bodies, I'd like to think we come into these bodies karmically, This body is here to teach us certain things that will help us, increase our consciousness, to elevate, and learn a few lessons that we need to learn before we move on. So we have this body. And what is this body teaching us? Well, one of the things, if we can learn how to cleanse the body, we can maybe get in touch with that inner self, that true self that we can communicate with. But that cleansing comes with a lot of detoxification. And so some people feel that detoxification as negative things. And it's not always a negative thing, but it can seem like that. For instance, I know with a lot of women, when they start a healing regimen like this, and I know this was true for Hildy Larson, if those of you are familiar with her, she lost a lot of hair. So she was very sick. She was hospitalized, bedridden. And on her journey, and I highly recommend you go to Hildy's website, read her books. Her first book is just so inspirational. And she's got a very compelling story that just truly expresses the powers of the herbs and the fruit to heal. But she was bedridden when she first got in touch with Dr. Morse, and through her detoxification journey, she did lose a lot of hair, but now if you look at her hair, it's beautiful, it's thick, it's full, and she's regrown it back with the same diet that was used to heal her. So the body kind of has this infinite wisdom where, you give it what it needs. And with what it needs, with, the beautiful, mineral-rich, simple sugar-rich, phytonutrient-rich fruits, and the herbs, which the herbs are basically whole plants. You give the body what it needs, and it takes that, and it cleanses the body. It cleans house. It removes the lymphatic congestion. And then, once enough of that has been removed, and the body feels like, okay, it's time to switch gears, then it starts rebuilding tissue. And that same thing is happening in the teeth. So I know it's kind of been a long, drawn-out story to get there, but the teeth genetically know one thing, and that's how to be teeth. So what is a tooth? A tooth, we basically have, the outer surface of the tooth. So the part of the tooth that you see, the crown, its outer surface is the enamel. If you look at the root of the tooth, its outer surface is called cementum. Deep to or underneath to both the enamel and cementum, we have a porous tissue called the dentin, and then deep to that we have a cavity, that's the pulp cavity, where there's blood and nerve supply. So in the tooth, like every single other organ and tissue, we have blood, we have lymph, we have some nervous tissue, and that's what we need to cleanse. So there's a process of cleansing internally. So the blood and the lymph get to the upper and lower jaw by way of lymphatic vessels. And also we have blood vessels going in there. So that pulp cavity, which holds those vessels, that can be affected. If that's congested, the lymph can't carry away the waste products, and that could compromise the nutrients being delivered from the blood through the dentin, which again on the outside of that is where your enamel is. So you can strengthen from the inside. And so with regards to Dr. Morse's formulas, you want to make sure you take a calcium-rich formula. You might also want to support the glands. Now, for those of you that are ethical vegans, there is issue with the glandulars because they do unfortunately come from animal sources. But Dr. Morse talks about them because they can sometimes be helping in a stronger way to support those endocrine glands. But for those of you that are ethical vegans, and I respect that because I fall into that category, I tend to prefer using the herbal strengtheners of the endocrine gland. So the endocrine formula is a wonderful formula. You can also work with the thyroid gland formula. We think of thyroid, that tonic, which supports the thyroid gland. It does support metabolism, but it also, the thyroid gland secretes a hormone called calcitonin, which, like parathyroid hormone from the parathyroid glands, also helps to stabilize blood calcium levels. So you always want to go on, kidney and lymphatics. Those herbal formulas are going to help cleanse the foundational tissues. You want to support, what else? I mentioned the thyroid gland. The endocrine formula would also be another kind of more wider or systemic way of supporting all of the endocrine glands. And then, the stomach and bowels, because you're going to be cleansing lymphatically from the bowel wall and, GI room. So there's certain levels of how much do you want to go down to the herbal process. So a detoxification specialist like myself, or one of the counselors that work with Dr. Morse, like Marcy or Attila, or any of the other amazing detoxification specialists that have gone through ISOD training with Dr. Morse, they can help put you on a protocol that can help you cleanse the teeth. Now, with that said, another formula that's quite beneficial is bones and connective tissue, or superfood 2. Both of those formulas are calcium-rich formulas. And usually, if I think somebody has a very severe parathyroid gland weakness, I may recommend the parathyroid glandular, and I always couple it with a calcium-rich herbal formula. Or, again, if you're not doing a glandular and you want to go on the endocrine formula, couple it with a calcium-rich herbal formula, like bones and connective tissue and or superfood 2. Now, I just thought of something. Bones and connective tissue does contain velvet deer antler. So it really is not vegan either, because the antler from the deer is utilized as an herbal source. So I always like to be upfront with my clients that are vegan, because I want them to make the choice of how they want to help themselves treat their specific issue. So Bianca, I would definitely try that herbally, and that's going to cleanse internally. So coming from the inside of the jaw to the tooth, that's going to help you remove that lymphatic congestion. And really the kidneys and the lymphatics are really going to be vital there, because that's going to pull that down into the kidneys and then out through the urine. Now, we can also help the teeth from working on the outside. So a couple of things we can do there. There is a herbal tooth formula which contains various herbs, like I think bentonite clay. And you can put, so an herbal tooth formula, you can get that from Dr. Morse. I know Dr. Christopher has some too. So you can go to the health food store, see what they have, or go to Dr. Morse's website. You can purchase his herbal tooth formula. You can even go to my website. I have all of Dr. Morse's herbs listed there, because I think his are the best. But you take a little bit of coconut oil, you put the powder on there so it sticks to it, and then just use that to brush your teeth. And that formula, with the mixture of herbs that are in it, it's going to cleanse from the outside. So it's going to, like the bentonite helps to really cleanse and draw out the wastes that are kind of impacting the outside of the tooth. And then that will help cleanse and strengthen from these external surface. So if you attack it from both sides, internally and externally, and you stick with the diet, maybe add some more greens to your diet. Some green juices are great, because those tend to be richer in calcium. These are all perfect ways to really help to strengthen your teeth. And it sometimes just takes time. So keep in mind, like with Hildy, I think she recently shared a picture showing her hair from 2015 to today. And in 4 years, or for less than 4 years, her hair is now full and thick. And this change doesn't occur overnight. So a lot of times we get very frustrated when we're going on a detoxification regimen, because people want to see rapid change. They want to see immediate results. And that's unfortunately what we've all become accustomed to, because allopathy provides that. Pharmaceutical drugs, you can take a pain pill, you can take an antacid, and they can affect immediately those symptoms and suppress and turn them off. And all they're really doing is turning off the alert mechanism in your body that's letting you know that something's wrong. And if you keep turning off that red flag and you continue on with your normal activities of poor diet, poor lifestyle, the next thing you know, you're going to get a stronger red flag, and then a stronger, and then you go to the doctor, they diagnose you with something, and then you start medication that makes even more of an issue, because you have to cleanse that medication you're taking. So it's always best to listen to those subtle messages right at the get-go. and then just detox until you can strengthen and heal. So we call this detoxification regeneration. That's the process by which we truly heal an organ or a tissue. Okay, I think I probably have some other questions popping in. So Bianca added, my main question this time was about teeth. I'm losing enamel. Front teeth are 3 millimeters shorter than 6 years ago. She has cavities pop up, and she's doing oil pulling, wheatgrass cleanse, using straws. She's been a strict vegan for 27 years. That's amazing. 2+ years as a fruitarian, 44 years as a vegetarian. She also has prolapsed organs. So prolapsed organs, what that means is that the organ is falling out of position. And that happens too when there is a parathyroid weakness. So the parathyroid gland, which secretes parathyroid hormone. This is the hormone that helps to maintain our blood calcium levels, as does the hormone calcitonin. So both of those hormones work together to maintain calcium homeostasis. And if either of those are off, that can cause a condition where the calcium could be taken from other structures in the body, other bones in the body, organs, and we don't want that to happen. Another thing that leaches calcium out, though, is excessive numbers of acids in our bodily fluids. So having a glandular weakness or acidosis, both of those can leach calcium and cause things like bruising, prolapsed organs, and so on and so forth. And so Bianca is just mentioning that she also has a genetic history of the parathyroid weakness, and she's planning on diving into a heavy-duty summer or spring cleanse, and she's going to dig deeper, and that's really what we need to do. And one thing I'm hoping to do, and it might be closer to the summer because my plate's pretty full right now with teaching full-time and with helping people with detoxification and, continuing to update my online EMP course. But by the summer, I'm hoping to free up a lot of my time, and I would love to have group detoxes that we all can do together, that we can check in with one another, maybe do like a 20-day grape cleanse or a 20-day juice cleanse of some sort. And that way, we're giving each other the support. So perhaps, Bianca, when I do a cleanse like that, you can join, and we can support each other. Because, even though I have all of this knowledge of how to help people heal, I still have to, put myself through detoxification episodes, and I try to do that at least 4 times a year, but it can be challenging. It's good to have that support and that motivation. So Joseph's here. If someone who has a very weak liver, is there a particular protocol that is best for clients with a weak liver? Is it better to take it slower or avoid certain fruits? The liver has so many functions. Could this affect someone's rate of healing? Well, the liver, as Dr. Morse describes it, is a chemical factory. And it basically is an organ that undergoes a lot of metabolic reactions. A lot of natural healers refer to the liver as a major organ of detoxification. The way Dr. Morse describes detoxification is that's the end step. That's when we're getting this junk out and we're putting it into the urine. The liver, what it does is, as a chemical factory, chemical changing factory, it helps, basically it's having everything that we absorb from our digestive tract. So the small intestine in our digestive tract is where we absorb most of the nutrients. And the hepatic portal vein is the vein that carries those nutrients from the intestinal tract to the liver. I also show a route where the lymph is taking fats from the small intestine directly to the liver. When you go by the normal teaching of the allopathic medical explanation, they teach that when fat is absorbed from the small intestine, it goes in the lymphatic vessels up to the subclavian veins, then we dump the fat into the blood, and then it eventually gets to the liver later. Again, that's a route where I question that. Dr. Morse questions that. So I show that alternate flow in that video I posted on my YouTube channel. Anyway, with that said, eventually all of the nutrients get to the liver, and then the liver has to handle all of that. Everything we absorb goes to the liver first. So if we have too much of something, like if you ingest a lot of sugar or a lot of a specific type of nutrient, the liver can store excessive amounts of specific nutrients, like it stores glucose as glycogen. The liver can convert one type of molecule into another type of molecule. It does, again, a lot of these different metabolic activities. Gluconeogenesis is the ability of the liver to convert amino acids and fatty acids into glucose. The liver can break down the glycogen stores and convert it back into glucose, releasing that glucose in the blood when it's appropriate. So, and in addition to that, the liver oxidizes fatty acids. It deaminates amino acids and forms ultimately urea, which our kidneys have to filter out. And so if there is a liver issue, any of those metabolic activities might be slowed down. But before we get too complex about all of the different things that the liver does, keep in mind it's an organ made up of cells. The cells in the liver, they give a special name, hepatocytes. Those cells have surrounding them interstitial fluid, which is part of our lymphatic system, and blood vessels passing through. So like Dr. Moore says, it's an organ made up of cells and two major fluids. And so, like any organ in the body, the spaces between the cells, imagine my fists are the cells, the space between those cells can become congested with impacted lymph. So lymph that is holding on or has too much waste products filling in those interstitial spaces. And when that gets really congested, just like if there's a bunch of trash inside your house, it's hard to move around. It's hard to go to the door and leave the house, or it's hard to get into the house. So we have to clean all of that stuff out. And so by cleansing the liver, you're going to help to increase the function of the liver. So pretty much sounding like a broken record, when any liver or when any organ becomes affected, when it's weak, whether it's genetically weak or it's weak because of abuse, misuse, then you need to start cleansing it. I always recommend that people go on the first kit. Dr. Morse has all of the kits. There's a 14-week protocol that he has on his website. I have all of these kits listed on my website, but the first kit has 2 kidney and bladder formulas. It has a lymphatic formula. It has a liver and gallbladder formula, because you always want to support that major organ early on in a detoxification protocol. It also has Parasite M, Parasite G, so you're doing a complete parasite cleanse. It has the endocrine formula as well as a stomach and bowel. And so when you put all of that together and you couple that with a high fruit diet, raw juicy fruits, maybe some green juices, and you are strict, you do that for 20, 30 days, there is not an organ that's not going to respond positively by cleaning out. The nice thing about these herbal formulas is that it's helping open up all of the organs of elimination. It's opening up the bowels. It's opening up the kidneys and helping them dump those lymphatic waste products into the urine. You know, and as we progress through an herbal detoxification protocol, whether you follow the detox protocol that Dr. Morse already has set up, which is a pretty generic setup, or you work with a detoxification specialist that can fine-tune that protocol for you to meet your specific needs, that's going to help fully bring that organ back online. And another thing I would recommend for you, Joseph, is to have somebody look at your iris, your irises. So I have clients send me iris photos. I practice iridology. Dr. Morse is the person that introduced me to iridology. It's an amazing way to non-invasively look into the body. And the iris, you can think of, you know, they say the eyes are the windows to the soul. The iris has it's a little map of the human body. And every little placement on the iris represents an organ. The hole going through your eyeball, which is in the center of the iris, that's the pupil. Just around that hole, that represents our gastrointestinal tract. And then outside of that, we have all of the various organs. So we can look at the iris to see, do you have a true genetic weakness in the area of the liver, or perhaps is it lymphatically congested? Do you see a lot of pigments impacted onto that area? When I see a lot of like brownish discoloration, especially on a blue eye or a mixed eye, that tends to indicate liver and gallbladder weakness. So doing a liver and gallbladder cleanse might be something you might benefit from as well. Dr. Morse has a liver and gallbladder cleansing protocol that I share with my clients. I always recommend, though, that they do liver and gallbladder for a full month before they do that cleanse. And in the week leading up to that cleanse, I recommend a high apple diet. Apples have malic acid, which is amazing for softening gallstones. The thing is, when you stimulate the gallbladder to release gallstones, if they are impacted, not only in the gallbladder, but impacted in all of the little bile ducts, you want to make sure those stones are nice and soft so that they're released easily. You also want to make sure your bowels are cleansing, because you don't want to dump all of that into the small intestine and then have it just get stuck there. So there's a lot you can do to flush the liver out. I don't recommend doing too many liver and gallbladder cleanses, but doing it periodically, once every year perhaps at first, that will help. And that will help to prevent things like fatty liver down the road. But yeah, liver and gallbladder issues are quite common. And it's so scary. And teaching, I've been, like I said, teaching almost 20 years now. And whenever we talk about the liver and the gallbladder in my anatomy and physiology courses, I always have one or two students who, in their young age of their 19, 20, 21, they've already had their gallbladder removed. I'm floored that their gallbladder has been removed. I remember when I was teaching up in near Seattle, Washington, that's the college I taught at before where I am now. One of my students knew that I was, very passionate about natural healing, and she actually asked me how she can save her gallbladder because her doctor was pushing for it to be removed. And so I shared with her what I knew, and hopefully, I can't control my students. I don't like to interfere too much with their lives because, that professor-student relationship, but at the same time, their life is on the line, so I'm not going to hold back. And if I think I can help them and offer them an alternative, and they can feel empowered by going down that road, perhaps they can save that cute little gallbladder, because it does have a job in our body. It's not just this organ that God gave us that has, it can go, we can take it or leave it. It does something really important, and if you have your gallbladder removed, you're going to have a hard time digesting fats, and that could interfere with the fat absorption of certain fat-soluble vitamins. There's just a whole plethora of things that could end up happening after that. Now, if you have had your gallbladder removed, there's still ways you can strengthen the liver. And, there have been stories of people growing back their gallbladder. I kid you not. People who have had their gallbladder, and I know one woman who's had, or maybe it was a man, one client I've had who had their gallbladder grow back twice. So they had it removed, it grew back, they removed it again, it grew back. I mean, it's like this little thing doesn't want to go away, so just let it be. Let it do its thing and just cleanse the liver and gallbladder. That's a much better route to go. So Walden, remineralization for the teeth. Yeah, so getting those calcium-rich herbs in and also cleansing externally. That's all helpful. So Bianca mentioned the thyroid, pituitary, liver, bowels, female reproductive, all of those. Bones and connective tissue does have, the velvet deer antler, unfortunately. There's a couple of formulas that Dr. Morse has that does have the velvet deer antler. So I always point that out to my clients that are vegan. All right, so moving on, Jennifer Mitchell. Oh, Bianca had one other thing to say. She got the tooth powder, so yes, stick with that. I use coconut oil as a base to help stick that to my toothbrush. And sometimes I have a little peppermint oil I add to it to make it, pepperminty like a normal toothpaste would be. So that's something you can do as well. I usually add the coconut oil first, then a couple of drops of peppermint oil, and then I add the tooth powder. And that helps it all stick, and then my mouth feels nice and fresh, and that's nice. Bianca mentions I never did green juices because I love fruit only. But yeah, try a green juice. So green juices, the greens, chlorophyll, which is the green pigment molecule in our green leafy vegetables. The color green, by the way, is very balancing and very healing. And our greens are some of the most calcium-rich foods out there. I mean, where is the cow getting all of its calcium from? They're out there in the fields eating the green plants, eating the grasses. And that's where we can directly get. Now, there is calcium, and some fruits have higher amounts of calcium than others, but the fruits have a beautiful array of calcium. But if you want to really get a more dense source of calcium, go for the green juices. And I always throw in my green juices because the green juices aren't as wonderful as the fruits as far as how they taste. So I always add like maybe a little bit of pineapple, some lemon, maybe some apple to my green juices, and that makes it much easier for it to go down. But the green juices are great at building. They're great at, like Walden said, remineralizing, adding those organic minerals back into our body. And then we use that to help regrow these structures. So maybe adding a green juice daily, that would be a wonderful way to help support that activity in your teeth. Jennifer Mitchell wrote, she heard Dr. Morse say liver weakness or detox can cause anger. That is so true. In Chinese medicine, they correlate emotions to all of our various organs. And I'm trying to remember from when I was studying naturopathy, but I learned all of that at one point. But yes, the liver is the seat of anger. And so what's really interesting when you're doing like a liver and gallbladder cleanse, or you're cleansing the liver specifically, you may have a lot of pent-up anger, maybe anger you have not felt for a while, but as you start cleansing that tissue, you start releasing that anger. So give your body that ability to express and release those emotions. So if you have somebody to talk to, that would be wonderful, whether it be a therapist or even a detoxification specialist. I tell my clients to email me whenever something is going on. I want to, if I can help them, maybe a quick phone chat, a quick Skype chat, if they're going through something emotional, I try to support them, because there is physical detox and there's emotional detox. And emotional detox is quite real, because a lot of what we take in our body is there to suppress some sort of emotion. I mean, a lot of people, like women, tend to eat more junk food, more fatty food, more chocolate right before their period. And their menstrual cycle, this is a natural cleansing time. So right before the woman in her uterine wall, right before she releases that built up endometrial tissue. And the menstrual cycle is meant to be a natural detoxification for that organ, because this is the organ, the uterus, that's going to be housing the cute little fetus for 9 months. You want that organ to be as healthy as possible, and you want that space that the fetus is growing in to be as clean as possible. So she asked the woman that is, of childbearing age, between, puberty and menopause, every month she's going through a detoxification cycle, and she builds up a lot of emotion as that endometrial tissue thickens fully. And then right before she's about to release it, that premenstrual period, those emotions are at a height. And so the woman should, females on average should make note of that emotionally they're going to be a little bit more sensitive, and have a healthy way to deal with that, whether it be giving yourself time and space alone, journaling, talking to somebody. It's all great, because in writing things out, in talking, you're getting to the heart of the issue, and your body is always trying to communicate with you. So it's good to practice that. But yes, anger is housed to the liver. So other organs, I think I've heard like the lungs are associated with grief. The kidneys are associated with fear. So there's a lot. I don't know of them all. I'll have to go back and read that. Michael writes, any idea of the cause of a vision looking like broken glasses when jumping up and down? So like, are you seeing like little light specks when you're jumping up and down? I know that there's a variety of reasons why there could be visual disturbance going on in the eyes. I mean, things like floaters that happen are often due to the vitreous humor, which is the gel-like material in the back of the eyeball, which is made up of gelatinous proteins. And those proteins, by the way, are there your whole life. So if those proteins start to, again, become too acidic, so when our body is over acid and those proteins start to agglomulate, as Dr. Moore says, as they start to become more compact, that can appear in our field of vision as floaters. So sometimes when people are moving in a very bright space, they can see those types of things in their field of vision. In other cases, if it feels like it's like a sharp, it looks almost like firecrackers, that could be the retina, and perhaps the retina, which is on the inside lining of the eyeball, which the vitreous humor is helping to hold in place, that retina could start to detach a little bit. So in those cases, I would typically recommend the eye health formula that Dr. Morse has. You can also do an eye wash where you remove the alcohol from the eye formula, and after you steam off the alcohol, you put a little of that in a little eye cup, and then you just basically hold it over your eyes, lean back, and blink. And that will help draw out any congestion from the external surfaces of the eye. This is also great for people that are undergoing, like I probably should do that because I'm wearing readers right now. Too much teaching, and I've been teaching online as well, so a lot of computer screen reading. Which is why I recently bought blue blocking shades, but I'm not wearing them right now. And but activities like that, protecting your vision, staying away from laptops and phones because we have an over tendency to use those, and that can affect our vision. So there's a lot of things you can do to help your eyes. Michael writes, have we spoken on hair? Oh yeah, Michael, I actually remember, I remembered your topic on the YouTube. So yes, mentioning hair loss and have men easily reversed male pattern baldness. I personally, unfortunately, have not helped any men. Oh, actually, you know what? I take that back. I do take that back. There was one young man that I worked with when I was at Dr. Morse's clinic working with him that he did have hair loss, and that was one of his major concerns. And so yeah, and we actually had some success with that. He said, after a few months, I remember he was getting kind of that fuzzy hair growing in, and that was kind of coming through the hair that he had already lost. And so I don't know, because he was a younger man. He was probably in his early 20s, late teens when I worked with him. I don't know if he had the genetic male pattern baldness, but he was losing a lot of hair. And so again, upper circulation, brain and nerve, those herbal formulas will help draw more blood to the head region, helping to nourish those hair follicles. Obviously, kidney and bladder and the lymphatic formulas helping to drain the excessive amounts of congestion that are in those tissue spaces surrounding the hair follicle. So the hair follicle, which is the part of the hair in the bulb that contains the blood supply and the lymphatic supply, it needs to be cleansed and it needs to be nourished. So all of this can help regrow hair. I think with males, though, I don't know, other than that one client of mine, and I haven't seen him in a while. I know I did see him at the level 1 that I was at in 2017 when I taught there with Dr. Morse, and he showed up. And it looked like his hair looked a lot healthier than the time I had saw him before. So, but yeah, I just haven't had the opportunity to work with a lot of males, but that would be my recommendation. My recommendation would be to cleanse, to dig deeply, and sometimes it takes a while before you start seeing those changes. So you really have to kind of stick with the high fruit diet. You can take breaks every now and then. You can slow the detox down a little bit, but it's, really beneficial if you push through and you do those fruits. You do, the 20, 30 days of grapes with lemon. That is so cleansing. And if you can push through it, get to the other end, support yourself herbally, you're going to start seeing some changes. And, it doesn't hurt to back down for just a second. Like if you're doing 30 days of grapes and then you take a week off and you do some green juices, some green salads, and then you go back on it again. That never hurts either, okay? But as much as you can do of the cleansing fruits, you're going to see some benefit. Joseph writes, thank you for explaining. I have a big lesion in the liver area. Wasn't sure if the body could dump so much lymph in the liver that it wouldn't keep up. Well, remember where the lymph is going. Yes, lymph is coming from the small intestine. That's natural. That's natural how the nutrients are going to be flowing from the digestive tract to the liver. The liver is the area where we have to store, modify, detoxify all of those nutrients that come from what we ingest. Now, with that said, what is a lesion? So a lesion is just basically an abnormal area of an organ. We used to call actually the lacunae in the iris lesions, but that nomenclature has been replaced with lacuna because lesion tends to have kind of a negative connotation. So lesion, like I said, for a typical organ is just abnormal tissue, and it's tissue that's probably congested, lymphatically congested, so we have to cleanse that out, and that tissue will heal. You know, the liver is an amazing organ. You can remove a big chunk of it and it will grow back fully. And those hepatocytes divide mitotically, they can replace themselves. So it is one of these organs that is made up of cells that are capable of dividing and replacing any lost or damaged cells. All we have to do is make sure that we get the congestion out and that we get the blood in there. So, you know, looking at your kidneys, making sure you're seeing sediment in the urine, which is evidence that you're removing lymphatic congestion. I would, you know, stay on a liver and gallbladder formula. If you're experiencing, you know, liver soreness or pain in that region, you might want to be on the liver and gallbladder formula for a while because that will really help to support that gland. You know, we usually put the liver and gallbladder formula in the first kit, and then after that we switch the formulas around. But you can stay on the liver and gallbladder formula, or you can rotate it with the skin formula. The skin formula, interestingly enough, has a lot of the same herbs as the liver and gallbladder. So sometimes I rotate those two formulas, do like a month of liver and gallbladder and then a month of the skin. Sarah, hello, first time watching you live. Well, this is my second time doing this, so you're up there with the newbies if you're this is your first time. So my first Facebook Live was Friday, and that was kind of my practice run. I'm thinking about doing this every Sunday night, though, as a regular way to gather with people and to have people ask me questions about whether it be my course. I have a human anatomy and physiology course that I have through my website. I also offer detoxification consultations. Right now, most of my consultations, I only have time to do those on the weekends because I teach during the week. But after this semester, I'm taking the summer off and just 100% focusing on the stuff Dr. Morse does. So that's kind of exciting for me. But yes, welcome. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. All right, Michael writes, shattered glass or spider web looking. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe that's a retina issue. So it could be that vitreous humor in the back of your eyeball, in that posterior cavity, it could be that it's becoming over acid, and if it's starting to clump up, are you seeing any floaters in your eye? Because that's evidence of that, because that vitreous humor is really important to keep the retina up against the choroid coat in the wall of the eyeball. And if that retina starts to pull off, I mean, you've probably heard of detached retina, that can create those types of effects in your field of vision. It never hurts, you know, to go to an optometrist and have them take an ophthalmoscope and look into your iris and see if they see anything abnormal. So that might be an option. Iridologists, we don't really look into the pupil, but you know, there are those little devices that shine a light into the back through the pupil where you can see like the fovea and the optic disc. And you can also see the posterior surface of the retina. So that might be a beneficial thing you might want to have somebody do. Michael, day 11 of grapes, 22-hour intermittent fasting, dry fasting, strong concentrate tinctures. I'm trying to dig deep. You are digging deep. Day 11 of grapes. That's great. Add some lemons to that. I did 30 days of grapes back in 2015, I think. That was the last time I really did an intense grape fast. And very powerful. I earlier in 2015, in February of 2015, I fell rock climbing, and my ankle, I completely averted it, and you know, my medial malleolus of my tibia was sticking out, so it was an open fracture. It was a compound fracture. Literally, the bottom of my foot was facing up towards me, and I had 3 different surgeries to have my ankle put together. And it took me about 6 months before I could even start physical therapy. And then I started walking and slowly regaining function again. And that happened, like I said, in February of 2015. In November of 2015, when I finally got back home and I was getting back into teaching, I decided to do a 30-day grape fast. And I kid you not, day 20, 25 of that grape fast, I was jogging on that ankle. And my surgeon told me I will never jog. And I don't really do a lot of intense jogging because I have a ton of metal in that ankle. I'm hoping to maybe get that metal removed, and I would love to regain full function of my ankle again because I love hiking and jogging. But the grape fast did so much cleansing of all of the drugs that were used. When you're undergoing surgery like that, they put you under some pretty strong drugs. So I wanted to cleanse that out of my system and just kind of remove a lot of the lymphatic congestion that a lot of that was trapped there from simply the scar tissue of the surgeons cutting in. So keep in mind that even though our path of healing is an alternative, I don't even like to call it alternative, but it's a true path of healing. There is, a place for allopathic medicine, and, good surgeons are amazing, especially those that can put the body back together after a traumatic injury like my own. But good for you, Michael. Keep it up, because the longer you go with this grape fast, you're going to see some amazing results. Like I said, me jogging just 20 days into that, I was surprised that my ankle could move that much, because I was kind of limping before that. I was completely healed. Michael says, thank you. Well, thank you for being here. And Sarah, organic grapes in Montreal. Yeah, organic grapes, the season for organic grapes in North America, I want to say is like September, maybe August, September. That seems to be when I can find organic grapes. Keep in mind that any juicy fruit will do. So sometimes it's good to go with the seasons. So I know like Valencia oranges tend to be more prevalent in the winter time. So going on an orange detox, doing nothing but oranges. Dr. Morse, in his book, the Detox Miracle Source book, which is a great book, I recommend that for everybody. He talks about his experience doing 6 months on nothing but oranges. And he was in his 20s at the time when he did this, and he was lucky enough to be in an area where he was surrounded by organic oranges. But he had amazing experiences doing nothing but oranges for 6 months. So oranges, grapes, they're all going to be highly beneficial to help move out that lymphatic congestion. So go with what you can find, really. It's all going to help. If it's full of naturally distilled water coming from the root system of the earth, it's going to help you out. All of the fruits are wonderful. Tad, is it Tad or Thad? I've seen you on Facebook. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it. Would a person with major master gland weaknesses need to focus more on strengthening the hypothalamus and pituitary than the adrenals? So wouldn't that mean we need to first work on cleaning out the bowels first, and then the head can drain? And you're on board with this, so that the master glands can work better after the kidneys and adrenals first. Is it not true that we can get the adrenals to work right until we get the master glands working right? So what you're saying makes sense, because we have to remember, where is detox focused? It's right there at the kidney level, where we're pulling out that lymphatic congestion from all of our internal body fluids. So I teach in my normal allopathic anatomy and physiology course that the kidneys filter the blood. And we can show a pathway for that. All of the textbooks show that. The video that I posted, though, last week, I showed a pathway that I found in a research journal showing how the lymphatic system also is obviously in the kidneys. But there could be a route that we need more research to show definitively of how the kidneys filter out the lymph. But what makes the most sense is that the lymphatic wastes and the waste products in the blood, both of those wastes are exiting out through the kidneys into the urine. So that's where you want to do your major support. That's the organ that you really want to come online to be functioning optimally, because you need to get those kidneys to remove those waste products from your bodily fluids. The waste products in your blood and in your lymph, we call those internal waste products or endogenous waste products. Okay, these are the wastes that we're pulling out of those bodily fluids. Now, sometimes we can pull out of those bodily fluids from elsewhere, like the whole GI tract, mouth to anus, but more notably in the wall of the intestinal tract. You can lymphatically pull, so this is the wall of, like, let's say my small or large intestine. You can lymphatically pull from the inside of that organ into that lumen, into that space, so that it's exiting out with the feces. GI Broom is wonderful for that, and always coupling that with the stomach and bowel or heal-all capsules to really strengthen and tone the bowel wall. So that's another way to pull lymphatically internal waste products. And like you said, I mean, you're right, you're exactly right. We've got to support those foundational organs, so supporting the kidney, supporting the lymphatic system, supporting the stomach and bowels. And this is why those herbal formulas are highlighted in all of Dr. Morse's kits. Now, when talking about the master gland, it's way up here. So the master of the master is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a part of the brain. It's kind of in the deep area of the brain. It's just anterior to the pineal gland, and hanging below it is the pituitary gland. So two major, very important endocrine glands just behind and below the hypothalamus. But the hypothalamus has a lot of different functions. The hypothalamus does control the pituitary gland hormonally. The hypothalamus also controls the autonomic nervous system. So if you talk about, like, let's say the adrenal glands, the hypothalamus has an indirect effect hormonally on the adrenal glands and also a nervous system effect on the adrenal glands. So it's supporting it in two different ways. So the autonomic nervous system is that branch of your nervous system that controls those bodily functions that you cannot consciously control, like, for instance, heart rate, respiratory rate, how your blood flow is going. You know, is the blood going to the skin and you're getting really red because you're jogging outside, or is the blood flow going to the internal organs because it's really cold outside and you're trying to conserve heat? So that's what the autonomic nervous system does. The hypothalamus is the source that controls that. So the hypothalamus is a very important brain area. In addition to that, in addition to it controlling the pituitary and controlling the autonomic nervous system, it also is our thermoregulatory center. It controls our body temperature. It controls hunger and thirst. The thirst center, very important to the hypothalamus. There's an emotional component to the hypothalamus. So it's part of that limbic system where it plays a role in emotional memory. It has a lot of different functions. There's many different nuclei in the hypothalamus, and each nucleus, and the nucleus, when we talk about the brain, is just a cluster of neuronal cell bodies, but they each have their own specific function. And so when you support the hypothalamus, you support all of those functions. But if you're really trying to support a specific gland that has a hormonal connection and a nervous system connection to the hypothalamus, like the adrenals, the hypothalamus would be a good place to start. So it's a really important brain region, and you can see it right there kind of at the 12 o'clock position of the iris. So always check that area for pituitary and hypothalamus, because if you're dealing with any kind of adrenal gland, or I'm sorry, endocrine gland weakness, sometimes it's not the endocrine gland that's showing the negative symptoms. For example, it's been a long day. Hypothyroidism, too low of thyroid hormone being produced by the thyroid gland. So this could be due to a thyroid gland weakness. It could be due to congestion in the thyroid gland. So focusing on the thyroid gland would be really beneficial for that person, right? So if you're looking at their iris photo and you see that lymphatic congestion in that thyroid region of the iris, or you see a lacuna or a rarefaction, separation of fibers in that area, these are all indications that this gland is weak. But you might come across an iris. So you have a client and you look at their iris and their thyroid gland area looks fine. Maybe they have a little bit of mucus filled up there, but overall it looks pretty good. So if they're still showing negative symptoms of low thyroid function, then look at the 12 o'clock mark. Look at the pituitary or the hypothalamus, because the hypothalamus secretes a hormone, thyrotropin releasing hormone, that tells the pituitary to release thyroid stimulating hormone, and then the pituitary hormone, TSH, tells the thyroid gland to release its hormone. So we have this cascade of one hormone affecting another hormone affecting the third hormone. And if anything in that cascade is off, the thyroid gland can show weakness. So hypothalamus, incredible, and it could be the source of what you're looking at. But keep in mind, like you said, you always want to be supporting the kidneys, the lymphatic system, the bowels. All of those major organs of elimination need to be supported throughout any detox journey. So I hope that helps, but that's a wonderful question. I mean, you're right on board there. Sarah, okay, nice meeting you. I know, I think I'm a little bit delayed in getting to these questions here, so keep them coming. Is it Monisha or Monica Sedan? I hope I'm not saying that incorrectly. I just created a fracture in my arm, fell on ice. Any suggestions? Gosh, yes. They're like bone knit herb. You can do some compresses on the fracture itself. Now, sometimes you do need to go to the doctor to have them set the bone. Okay, so getting it set correctly is helpful, especially if it's one of those fractures where like at the epiphyseal plate, or it's been positioned abnormally. You know, a good orthopedic doctor can put that back in a normal position. But you can do things to speed up healing. So I would recommend herbal formulas like bone and connective tissue, superfoods 2. These are calcium-rich formulas, supporting the endocrine glands, supporting the parathyroid glands to really help get that calcium back. Because when you're healing a fractured bone, there are cells in your bone called osteoblasts. These are the cells that build the new bone matrix tissue. So those cells are supported. And actually the hormone from the thyroid gland, calcitonin, does stimulate the osteoblast to produce more of that calcified matrix. So supporting the thyroid gland is going to be really beneficial in healing a fracture. But the thing is, you want to keep the lymphatic system flow. You want to keep that moving. So when I was in the hospital for over a month with my 3 ankle surgeries, I basically was on 100% fruit. I think I had a couple of salads here and there, but the hospital staff, or I should say the kitchen staff, they started to learn my normal requests. And I don't know if I was getting a lot of organic fruit or not, but I was like, I need something. I'm not going to eat the junk that they're feeding me. So, you know, if you're not in the hospital, obviously you have a better control over your diet. But get those fruits in, get some of the greens in, and herbs. And like I said, you can do some compresses. Like bone knit is a great, you can make an herbal compress of that herb. So you're just basically making a poultice and putting it right there where the fracture is. And the herbs can help externally as well. There might be some other herbal formulas that I'm not thinking about that could be beneficial there as well. So Heal All Tea, that more of is a pooler, but that might help to cleanse a little bit. But bone knit is the herb that comes to mind initially. Joseph, thanks, Patty. This is a great session. Thank you for your time and passion. Is the Anatomy and Physiology course live or video workshops to watch, then asking questions in the session like these? Well, this was kind of my intention for the live Q&A. So right now, I'll answer anybody's question about anything, but I'm hoping to do something like this on a weekly basis so the students that are in the course can get help from me. You know, in the summer when I'm not teaching at the college, I will have probably more time available because, you know, like any college professor, I have office hours. So I have set times every week where students come to me and they bring their notes, they bring their books, they tell me what they've been studying, and we go over issues that they need more help with. So I want to make that available to my online students as well. With that said, the course is set up as video lectures. So you hear my voice and you see images on the screen, and I explain various physiological functions and the anatomy of the human body. I'm hoping that with time, and maybe I'll be doing this work with Dr. Morse, that I can offer in-person sessions as well. So maybe doing some A&P before or after an ISOD session, or maybe doing some standalone sessions. I would really like to have students have access to anatomical models and to do some microscope work, what a traditional A&P student would do. I'm not a big fan of dissection whatsoever. I mean, if we had a human cadaver to dissect where the human had donated their body to this endeavor, that's one thing. But dissecting animals has no place in a human A&P course. So we don't really focus on that. But with that said, there are some virtual human cadaver dissections in software that are very beneficial. So all of that's available. In fact, the textbook that is associated with my online course, it has an online study area. So if students buy the kind of newest version of that textbook through the publisher, they can get access to that online study area. And it has a whole online virtual human cadaver dissection, which is great. And I show those images to my students in class. And that way they get that benefit of seeing what that organ really looks like in a human body. And, not that we're going to be doing any dissection as detoxification specialists, but it's good to know where things are, because if you're going into this field, you're going to be communicating not only with your clients, but your clients have been communicating with probably someone in the allopathic field. And so you want to make sense of what they're telling you, and you want to be able to maybe look at what they bring to you as part of that healing session that they're scheduling. So it's good to have that foundational knowledge. But right now, it's just video lectures. I've been corresponding with a few of my students through email. In fact, some of what I do when a student has a specific question, my online students currently, is I will do video responses. So let's say I think a recent question from one of my online students was asking about, what was she asking about? I want to say it was something with the lymphatic system, because all of my students are obviously into the lymphatic system. But I think she had a question where I showed the picture in my video response, and I was explaining and helping her make sense of what she was confused about. So that's kind of how I work with students right now, since we don't have, I don't have any right now in the immediate future, anything planned for face-to-face type of interaction, but I'm hoping to change that. And I'm really hoping to work with Dr. Morse to offer a more broad spectrum of courses for like a pure naturopathic program, a true healing school where students can go through and learn anatomy and physiology, learn iridology, learn how to use these herbs effectively to help people heal, so getting some herbology medicine, some plant medicine in there, spiritual studies, all of this as a holistic program. This is something I know Dr. Morris has been talking about, and I want to be there to support him. So news on that could be coming shortly. But I know that A&P will be a foundational science course, and even chemistry. So my master's degree is in biochemistry, so I plan on putting a biochemistry course together as well. Just getting that foundational chemistry coursework out there. Right now in my A&P course, though, I do offer a full lecture on chemistry, so you get that foundational chemistry with the A&P course as it stands now. Okay, so so that's a little bit how that works. Right now, no workshops in person scheduled, yes, but I do recommend that my online students get in touch with me frequently to ask questions. Annie, one of my female clients, 47 years old, did 40 days of grapes in 2017. It stopped her period and she hasn't gotten it back. What's my opinion on that? So 47 years old, we're at that age with some women where they do hormonally start changing. Now keep in mind, women, the menstrual cycle usually begins, well, unfortunately, it begins in our modern day and age quite early. Very young girls are starting their menstrual cycle, but for most young women, it usually starts around 14, 15, 16 years of age. And then that carries them through the childbearing years where physiologically they're optimally primed for carrying a fetus full term. Now, obviously we live in a society where we don't keep our organs very cleansed, and the body kind of intuitively knows when it's in a time where it can't carry a fetus full term. And so during that time, the cleansing may slow down. And also when you're cleansing, and you're really cleaning out those tissues, they may not need to release that endometrial tissue and fluid as much as they did before. So one thing we find with women who are very lymphatically congested, very acidic, they tend to have very heavy periods. And one thing they find is that as they go through a detoxification protocol, that their periods become lighter and more manageable, and the pain and the cramping kind of go away. Now, when women get a little bit older, this decreases, and it may decrease so much that they might only get a little bit of spotting. That does not mean that they're done menstruating. All it means is that they don't need to detoxify and remove as much tissue from their endometrial wall as they did prior to them cleansing, when their tissues probably were more lymphatically congested. So that could be part of what's going on, because at 47, she's still young. I mean, there have been women in their 60s still giving birth to children. But she could also hormonally start going through a cycle where she's slowing down a little bit. So the body's going to try to communicate that. But I would say, you know, supporting the pituitary, supporting the female reproductive system, that can help, because the pituitary secretes, you know, hormones, the luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. These hormones both target the ovaries, and then the ovaries produce estrogen and progesterone, which target the uterine wall, and that's how that whole hormonal, and we really can go back to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormone, which then targets the pituitary, telling it to secrete LH and FSH. There are other factors that can control the release of those two hormones, and then those, like I said, target the ovary. So supporting the major endocrine glands, supporting the female reproductive system, that could help tone and strengthen her uterus so that maybe it comes back on board with a more regular cycle. But it could be that the cleansing really kind of cleansed so much of the tissue that she doesn't need to have a heavy period every month. That really could be at the heart of what's going on. What's interesting is even women that have had their uterus removed, they've had a hysterectomy, like a partial hysterectomy, or even a complete hysterectomy, they will still feel those hormonal changes because their receptors for those hormones become primed every month. It's like this emotional memory for the hormone to come and target that organ. It's so interesting. I think there's a book called Molecules of Emotion, and it talks about, you know, the hormones and just how beautiful they are and what attracts them to the receptor. It's a very kind of emotional, spiritual way to look at the endocrine system. So I recommend that book if you can get a hold of it. In EU, organic, non-hybrid grapes, August to October. Now it's citrus time, my favorite, and this is Bianca, by the way. That is why I call my site Orange Helia. Oranges all the way. Yes, oranges are amazing. That's Dr. Morris's go-to fruit. It's so sad that we can't get good fruits in many areas of the world, but you know, perhaps I should move back to Florida and get some really good fruit again, because I miss it. Tad, thanks so much for answering my question. What I am getting at is if the adrenals are severely not functioning right, then the kidneys will not filter. That's true. Until you get the adrenals working better. Oops. And let's see, let me expand this. So yeah, you need the kidneys, you need the adrenals to be working to help the kidneys out. I lost my place here, 1 second. So what I'm getting at is that if the adrenals are severely not functioning, then the kidneys will not filter. And then you need the adrenals working better to get the adrenals to help the kidneys filter, and then the master gland could not be working right. So what I'm saying is for some that are having a really hard time getting filtration, it could be the master gland weakness more than the kidneys or the adrenals. Okay, now I see what you're saying. Yeah, it could be the other way around. I mean, it's good to initially start at the kidneys. And what he's getting to is that for many people, it's hard to get those kidneys to open up and to start seeing that sediment that we look for as evidence of that removal of the lymphatic congestion in the lymphatic spaces. So sometimes I recommend, I tell my clients to keep an eye on their urine. So Dr. Morris has this great handout that he shares with people that shows a urine sample, and you can see whether the urine is, just clear and colorless, or it might be just clear and yellow, or it's got sediment in it. And when we're detoxifying, that sediment tends to become more prevalent. it's good after you collect a urine sample, collect it in a glass jar, let it sit for like an hour or up to 4 hours, because sometimes you don't see the sediment right away, and when it sits there for a long period of time, it all collects at the bottom. And that's evidence that you're getting that lymphatic congestion out. Now, with that said, if you're detoxifying and your urine is very clear, and that tends to happen when you're eating a lot of fruit, especially high, juicy, water-rich fruit, because it's so cleansing. It flushes out so much that the solution ratio, there's so much more water than there is solute, you just don't see the sediment. So we might recommend some dry fasting to help concentrate the fluid so you can actually see that congestion is coming out. But sometimes even people with dry fasting, they're still not seeing that sediment. So this is where you might want to look then at what could be the problem if it's not the kidneys themselves, or what's making that kidney not function optimally. So at that point, there's a couple of options you can look at, but like Tad was saying, we might want to look back at the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus secretes a hormone called corticotropic releasing hormone. Corticotropic releasing hormone targets the anterior pituitary gland, telling it to release ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. ACTH then targets the adrenal glands, and it tells the adrenal glands to secrete cortisol. Now, hormonally, that's how that cascade works. Now, cortisol really is more of a stress hormone, but through the sympathetic nervous system, the hypothalamus also controls the adrenal glands. There, it's stimulating the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine. Now, the hormone you're thinking of that affects the kidneys most notably are hormones like aldosterone. That's a type of hormone called a mineralocorticoid, which affects the levels of various ions in the blood. And these are ions whose levels can be maintained by affecting various regions of the nephrons in the kidneys. The nephron is the functional unit of filtration in the kidney. So that's how the adrenal glands, through those hormones, affect the kidneys. But there is that strong connection with several of the hormones coming from the hypothalamus. So you might have to start back there. So doing, major endocrine gland support with the endocrine formula, even the pituitary formula. I don't think there's an herbal formula specifically for the hypothalamus, but there are glandulars for the hypothalamus that some people have been, I think Marcy's been getting into using the hypothalamus glandular as a way to support clients. But yeah, it could be that you need to look at those master glands, especially if you're dealing with a tough case and the kidneys simply just don't want to purge out any of the congestion. John writes, Mucuna pruriens is a great, and I'm probably saying that incorrectly, is a great herbal ingredient that aids the pituitary and dopamine secretion. All right, so I'm not familiar with that specific herb, but I'll have to look into that. And dopamine, that's both a neurotransmitter and it functions hormonally, but as a neurotransmitter, it's that pleasure neurotransmitter. It brings forth a peace, not really peace, I should say, but more happiness. It's also the hormone or neurotransmitter that tends to be heightened when people do certain types of recreational drugs. That's dopamine. Dopamine levels are low in cases of Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. That's a lack of dopamine. So someone with Parkinson's may benefit there from that herb. So thank you for sharing that, John. Bianca is replying to Tad, so hopefully Tad was able to read that. I'll kind of keep going on because I think my list is getting pretty long here. Simple fracture in a cast. Oh, he's a senior. So if the fracture is in the cast and you can't get to it because of the cast, really just, Fab4, that's a great place to start, or just that first kit. But, you want to do a calcium-rich herbal formula. So Superfood 2, or you can try Bones and Connective Tissue. Both of those formulas, very calcium-rich and good for the bones overall. You're welcome. See, agreed. Knowing the human body is crucial. Thank you, Bianca. Lynn is here. Hi, Lynn. How are you? Joseph says, thank you. Lynn is asking, what is a healing crisis and why do we get them? How do you feel about the enhanced pills from Dr. Morse? I've never really worked with the enhanced pills. I don't know a lot about those. So I know Dr. Morse, I think when I was there, he had those, but I never really worked with those specifically. With the healing crisis, there's kind of a big difference between, well, some people say everything's a healing crisis. So any type of symptom that you have, your body's telling you something's not right, and your body's probably trying to purge that which should not be there. Perhaps it's lymphatic congestion that's building up to the point of causing an irritation and then progressing to inflammation, and your body's just like, oh, time to get rid of this, because if I keep this in my body too long, that tissue change is going to go from inflammation to something even more serious, like tissue change, ulceration, induration, or the C word, the neoplasms, as we are more safe to say. So that's what a symptom is. But usually that symptom's there because the body's doing something to try to purge something out of your body. And could we call that a healing crisis? Perhaps. Now, with that said, when you go on a detoxification protocol, these herbs and the clean diet tend to accelerate your body's ability to get rid of that which should not be in those tissue spaces. And so this is what promotes a stronger healing crisis. And a true healing crisis that occurs during a detoxification protocol is really going to be short-lived, and it might be a little bit more intense while it's going on, but after it's done and over with, you're going to feel amazing on the other side of that. And I would recommend, during a very intense healing crisis, resting, making sure your bowels are adequately supported, because a lot of that could be because the bowels are impacted and you're reabsorbing a lot of those toxins and waste back into your bodily fluids. So you've got to make sure you're having those daily bowel movements. Get on the stomach and bowel formula. Make sure you're having 1 to 2 bowel movements a day at least. And if things get really bad, that's when we would recommend something like an enema. But don't use the enemas as a crutch. They're there to be there for the purpose of getting stuff out, getting things going. And then after that, use an herbal formula to maintain the stomach and bowels. And eventually, you'll probably have to use maybe something like GI Broom to lymphatically cleanse the walls of the GI tract. Because if it's impacted there's probably a lot of stuff building up. Bianca, I have a lot of allopathic doctors as friends. She wanted to be a reconstructive surgeon. Wow. So they're her friends on her Facebook when she posts detox stuff about diabetes and details about what we are doing, or what we are doing and what she does. And she doesn't want to sound silly in front of her doc friends. So my lectures are very important to her, and she wants to learn as much as possible to sound credible. You will. You're gonna. That's what I tell I remember when I was teaching back, like this was 10 years ago. I had a student. She was an older student, maybe in her late 50s, and she was simply taking my class because she wanted to be able to talk to her doctors more effectively. She wasn't going into nursing. She just, she was a wife that stayed at home, and she wanted to learn about her body so that when she went to the doctor, she knew what they were saying and she could ask knowledgeable questions. Everybody should know about how their body works, mostly because you don't want to be blindly led down a path that could be dangerous for you. I think a lot of allopathic doctors go into the field of medicine with good intentions. And I was in medical school, and I remember it was during like my 3rd year of med school when I started doing clinical rotations that it just hit me like something's not right here. And then, later on, doing rotations, especially with family physicians, thinking to myself, why is it these pharmaceutical representatives are doing most of the education for these doctors? I mean, all they're telling us is how this drug works and what incentive this doctor will get if they prescribe a lot of them. So, that's when I kind of felt like this is not right for me. It was later at that time that I did an internship with Dr. Joel Furman, who's a medical doctor who back in the 90s was doing water fasting. And I was really intrigued by that, water fasting, doing nothing but water. And here he is getting these amazing results, helping people cure very chronic diseases. So I went up there and I called him up and I told him I was a medical student. I want to do an internship with him. And he invited me up to New Jersey to work with him. And I was so inspired by the clients he was working with that I actually did a 26-day water fast myself. And, you know, Dr. Morris doesn't really support water fasting, mostly because we tend to be very chronically congested in today's society. And so water fasting is pretty intense, and you really have to rest, and you really want to be monitored. When I was working with Dr. Furman, we tested the blood of the people that were there water fasting. So, you know, I was drawing blood samples, and we were just making sure electrolyte levels were normal, you know, doing the daily vitals on everybody just to make sure that their body's responding well to the water fast. And I think there was one person that had an emotional breakdown during water fasting. Again, lots of emotions stored up in our tissues. They can come up during an intense cleanse. But, you know, Dr. Furman basically told me that, you know, and this was before he was as big as he is today. Now he's, you know, written many books, and he, you know, he's been on Dr. Oz, and he's got like a PBS special. But back in those days, he said, you know, Patty, I am not going to make a lot of money being a physician. My source of income is going to come from writing books and doing seminars, because, you know, this type of healing, it's just free. People go out there and they buy fruits and vegetables, and they stop eating as much of the bad food. It's very simple. You know, pharmaceuticals are very expensive, and people become dependent upon them. So there could be, I don't know, maybe some sort of agenda of getting somebody on drugs as a way to become a prosperous industry. But, you know, it was shortly after that I decided I just can't do this medicine thing. It just seemed too weird for me. So then I went down the route of teaching. But yeah, Bianca, you're going to, you know, taking a course like this, it will help you communicate with all of those individuals. And, you know, you'd be surprised. As a detoxification specialist, you're going to have doctors and nurses as clients. They're going to come to you, mostly because they see, especially the nurses, they see firsthand what these treatments are doing to their patients. You talk to an oncology nurse or an oncology physician. Would they themselves put their own children through chemotherapy or radiation therapy? What would they do if one of their family members or themselves became diagnosed with a disease that would call for chemotherapy or radiation therapy? I guarantee, because they've seen what these therapies do to their patients, they're going to look for something else. And a lot of them do, and a lot of them come this way. So this field is going to get bigger and bigger. As more truth gets out there, as more people start looking for alternatives, we are going to grow, and we're going to need as many of you beautiful people out there out working with people, going to the hospices, helping those people to think, you know, their end is coming. There's always hope. We have a voice. We need to get that out, and we want to be knowledgeable, because, you know, people are going to come and they're going to get upset because we might be threatening their lifestyle. You know, there's a reason why doctors and nurses may not choose chemotherapy for themselves, but they have to suggest it for their patients, because first and foremost, they can lose their license if they don't. There's a paycheck attached to that recommendation for that therapy, and their lifestyle, their livelihood is dependent upon that. What I say is that we need, as a human species, need to step up, and we need to do what's right, what's truthful, what's honest, what's moral, and stop being a part of these systems that are killing. I mean, allopathy, you know, by their own research, it's the third leading cause of death on this planet. And if you look at the two causes of death above that, we have heart disease and we have cancer. Well, why do people get heart disease and cancer? Could it be from allopathic recommendations, which would put their system as the leading cause of death? I mean, something needs to change. And, you know, so much money is spent on allopathy in the United States, and yet we are one of the sickest countries on the planet. Something's not right. And I saw that it was not right when I was in medical school, and I just decided I'm not going to be part of this system. So I went a different way, and after I found Dr. Furman, I got more into raw foods, and I can go more and more into my story, but here I am today, right? So yes, Bianca, you will be able to effectively teach or talk to your friends that are doctors and nurses. Annie writes, what do you think about dates and lemon protocol for helping kidney filtration? Does it really work? Would you recommend it for people who are having a hard time to get kindness or filtered, or get their kidneys filtered, I guess, even with dry fasting? So dates and lemon, I'm not familiar with that protocol. I mean, I know, is it because the dates are a richer fruit and they're a little bit more dehydrated as opposed to like a water-rich fruit, but then you're adding the lemon? I don't know. I would say grapes and lemon would be a little bit better than the dates and the lemon. That would be my go-to. I don't know. I don't have familiarity with dates and lemon. I've never suggested that for any of my clients, but I'm always open to things people have tried and the results they've gotten. So if you can share anything with me about that. But I honestly cannot say from my experience that I would recommend dates and lemon. Lemons are great though. Lemons, like the Master Cleanse, great. That's going to be very healing. And in the Master Cleanse, they use cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper is amazing. I mean, it's everybody has it in their kitchen cabinet. I think I posted on my my Facebook page that a teaspoon of cayenne in water can stop a heart attack. I was cutting up some fruit a couple of weeks ago, and I cut my finger pretty deeply, and I went and put some cayenne pepper on it, and that immediately just kind of soaks up the blood. We have Dr. Morris has the cayenne garlic herbal formula, which is great for people that have high blood pressure. So cayenne is a wonderful herb. Also, this is Tad. Also, Dr. Jensen talks about if you have a weak thyroid, your metabolism can be really low, and with a low metabolism, our bodies will be slow to heal and function correctly. That's true. Thyroid gland is the thyroid hormone is the hormone that elevates our metabolism. So again, is helping the master glands to function better, so our metabolism will be stronger, and the body will respond better to detox. It could come back to the hypothalamus and pituitary. This is again where the iris is going to be part of what will help you make the best recommendation for your clients. So really learning about iridology, and I know, Tad, you probably know a lot. You've worked with Dr. Morris, and just look at the iris. Look at the iris area on that area on the iris. What does it look like? Are there any signs of weakness, genetic weakness? Is there signs of congestion in that area? And if there's not, look up at those master glands, because that could be what you need to get the metabolism going. And then with a higher metabolism, you have better circulation, you're sweating more, so you're opening up that channel of elimination by activating the sweat glands more appropriately. Hypothalamus, also the master gland, the thermoregulatory center of the brain, that too affects our sweat glands directly. So you need to get all of those channels of elimination there. You really want to be careful though. Speaking of hypothyroidism, I want to point one thing out. It's good to get the skin channels open. And if you have a patient, not a patient, we don't have patients, we have clients. If you have a client that has hypothyroidism, low functioning thyroid, you want to be careful though before you recommend any kind of therapy like a infrared sauna, which we don't really recommend that as much as the steam saunas, but where they're like really trying to open up their pores because they can become very overheated because their sweat glands don't work very well. And it could be a hypothalamus issue because of that. It maybe it's not even the thyroid gland. Maybe the thyroid gland's not responding because the hypothalamus or pituitary are not activating that appropriately. But with that said, gently get the skin on board. So you might want to do like initially have them do some baths, maybe with a little bit of mustard seed or cayenne pepper in the bath. Just be careful not to use too much. These herbs will open up the pores though and help the skin eliminate. You just don't want to overheat those clients because they can't sweat very well. They can't cool themselves down as efficiently as someone whose thyroid gland or other glands are working more appropriately. This is why people with hypothyroidism have to be careful on really hot days too. They can overheat. So make sure they have a lot of fluids on hand. Sarah writes, I can heard a noise in my stomach or I don't know what it is. Can you explain, please? What kind of noise in your stomach? Maybe if you can expand on what the noise was. It could be gurgling noises, which are very common, but was it something that you were experiencing during detoxification? Hugs and blessings to you too, Lynn. Thank you. Bianca agreed. I do have tons of allopathic doctors and nurses that have come to you for the last 4 years. So that's saying a lot if they're coming to you for help. Yeah, they need help. They really do. Unfortunately, these people it's not that I don't know, doctors and nurses, they're not taught what we are learning here together with Dr. Morris, with working with clients. This is not part of their training. It's not, they just don't get this information. So it would be beautiful if we all could work together, because eventually allopathy is going to go away. It's just not sustainable. We can't keep hurting people like this. And these doctors and nurses that want to help people, they're going to have a new field where they can continue to take their knowledge, but use it for good. Use it for helping people really heal so that we get to a point where they don't need the doctor anymore. You know, I don't want repeat clients. I want my clients to come to me for a detoxification protocol. I want to set them up and I want to give them the knowledge that they can do this on their own for the rest of their lives. They use herbs for a short while, get their channels of elimination open, get their kidneys open. They can heal themselves, and we're empowering people. And that's the goal. It's not to keep people coming back over and over and over again, you know. That's kind of what they do in allopathic medicine, unfortunately. And they sell these prescription drugs that people then end up taking forever. Chad, I lost my kid for not accepting their therapy. Oh, Chad, I am so sorry. I take it like child services came in and interfered with it. It's crazy. I mean, you know, there's somebody out there called Mark. His name is Mark Passio. And if you get a chance, he's got a great podcast. He's got tons of information. But the information he's putting out there has to do with the control systems in our country and in this world. He calls them the powers that should not be. His name is Mark Passio, Passio. And we need, as a nation, as a human species, need to step up and say, okay, these powers that should not be are no longer going to control us and control our destiny. We have the right, we have natural law rights to walk, to talk, to decide what therapy we want for ourselves, for our children. These are natural law rights. There's no governing body that can tell us that we cannot or cannot do that. I mean, even getting a license to drive. I mean, I can drive. I don't need a little car to tell me that I can get into my vehicle physically, turn on the ignition, and go somewhere. It's amazing that we have all of it. We just blindly accept these mechanisms of control. And if you look at the root word of government, government comes from guber, that govern, gubernare, and then ment is mind. Government etymologically means mind control. They're conditioning us through education. I call it public indoctrination camps, but through education, we're being indoctrinated to believe these certain things, that government is necessary, that we need somebody to control us. We need to vote for somebody to make decisions for us. We can make decisions for ourselves. So Chad, I am so sorry. My heart breaks for you. And it's sad that when we get into this knowledge, we have to do things that kind of work around this system, like for my pets, my dogs and cats, like rabies vaccine is mandated. So what do I have to do to help protect my dogs and cats? I don't want them to become vaccinated. I don't want these chemicals to be injected into their bodies. So you have to work with the system. You have to find ways to work around it. I elect for titers every single time. So the titers, if they show the antibodies are present, you might find a vet that will check you off and say, okay, you're good to go. We don't need to vaccinate. So look for usually a good homeopathic veterinarian would be a go-to source as a vet that would be open to titers. But a lot of regular vets are open to them as well. So titer, T-I-T-E-R, that would be a safer route. And it would be sad that they couldn't do that for children as well. I mean, my goodness. But, you know, I've had friends, I don't personally have any children, but I have friends who have decided not to vaccinate their children. And when I see their children and I compare them to other children, their children are so calm, they're collected, very peaceful, whereas the vaccinated children tend to be enervated, tend to be very hyper. It's sad because these therapies are not healing. They're not healing whatsoever. So Chad, I greatly apologize for that. I'm so sorry. John, there is already a plant-based movement in Canada. Yeah, I found out that Canada is going plant-based. That's amazing. Maybe we should all move up north. Vancouver is beautiful. So the Canada's food guide has changed in support of it. I feel that they'll slowly incorporate healthier methods to our lifestyles to protect themselves later. So if the brunt of lawsuits that could possibly hit them won't occur at a detrimental level. The medical system is at the brink of collapsing. I really think it is. You know, I really think it is. This country, the United States, I don't know. I sometimes think, this is things I've learned by listening to Mark Passio, but I sometimes think our country, the United States, if you're in this country, I think it's kind of a big experiment. How much can we program a population and see if they'll continue doing these crazy things? I mean, it confuses me. But some of the other countries out there, some of the European countries, Canada, they're changing their ways, okay? Now, I know people love the foundations with which the United States was based on, you know, the Constitution and what those people that wrote the Constitution, what their mission, what their vision of this country was. Well, if they saw the country today, I don't know what they'd say. This is a health session, though. This is not a political session. So, Dee Dee, oh, thank you for sharing the lemon and date protocol. So I will flag that, and I don't know if I can open that up now, but I will take a look at that. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Sarah writes, yes, like I can hear something inside moving. It's hard to explain. So if your stomach is maybe it's active, it's moving, and I hope you're talking about the stomach as an organ, or sometimes people are referring to just the entire abdominal region. But is it on the upper left-hand side? If so, that is the stomach organ. And if it's overreactive, it could be overacidic. So there are a variety of reasons why it could be making abnormal noises. So a little bit more information about that. I know I'm asking a lot, but yeah, that would help. Date and lemon protocol got me filtering almost immediately. Definitely worth looking into. Thank you, Dee Dee. So that's maybe a trick that we may want to look at if we have clients that are struggling with filtration. I know I've had a couple of clients working at Dr. Morris's clinic where they weren't filtering. And when they started filtering, that's when we started seeing changes. I remember one woman specifically, she had really swollen ankles. And I was recommending dry fasting, but she was a little bit hesitant. And she finally did it in between two of our sessions. And when I had talked with her again, she had done a 36-hour dry fast. And she said immediately after that, she started filtering. And then finally, the chronic swelling that had been in her ankles went away. It was just like those two are connected, obviously. So you get the kidneys to filtering. What are they filtering out? That congestion that is associated with the inflammation or the swelling. It's all connected. Let's see. Bianca, no, for everyone or when you start this, fresh fruits are superior. That is so true. Get the fruits. Nothing cooked, nothing dehydrated, water-rich fruits. Tad, yes, I do iridology daily with my clients. I see almost 100% of people's eyes have very chronic stomach and bowels. Yes, they do. And really congested master gland areas. Yeah, you notice that brain flare area, the sinus region, and then the brain flare area just outside of that. That's always chronically congested. I mean, it's amazing how that area on the iris, which is associated with the brain, with the sinuses, with a lot of the head structures, lots of congestion in that area. So would that not mean that the person has first to work on cleaning the bowels before they really work on the adrenals? Oh, what did I skip something? So would that not mean that the person has to first work on cleaning out the bowels and getting the head to drain? Definitely get the head to drain before they really work on their adrenals and all of the other glands, because working on those glands before lymphatic congestion is cleared would just stress out the glands so that they are too weak from the acids. Dr. Jensen said the bowels are the king of the elimination channels. Would you agree or not agree? Thank you. You know, a lot of the healers like Dr. Jensen, Dr. Christopher, they really do stress the bowels. Even Dr. Schultz. These are natural healers that have their own herbal formulas that have been doing a lot of healing protocols, and a lot of them do stress the bowels. What Dr. Morse has brought to the table with the kidneys and the lymphatic system is that the bowels, when you cleanse those, they're obviously helping with issues like malabsorption, and they're preventing from the kind of reabsorption of toxic congestion in the bowel wall. And they're, you know, to some extent, you know, herbs like the GI broom are lymphatically pulling on the gastrointestinal tract. So you are removing a lot by cleaning out those bowels. But while that's taking place, all of those internal waste products are building up in the interstitial spaces, and that needs to be lymphatically cleansed. And the only route, or I shouldn't say the only, but the main route to take those congested acids out of the body is the kidneys and filtering that into the urine. So that's why Dr. Morse so heavily stresses on the kidneys and the lymphatic system. But you know, everything is important. Getting the bowels to be cleansed, strengthening and toning the bowel wall, and helping to remove all of that out of the body. And then as far as the, you know, congestion in the head region, 3-lung tea is amazing. Doing herbal inhaling of 3-lung tea. You can even throw in some heal-all tea to that. And that will help to lymphatically cleanse the congestion in the sinuses and in the respiratory tract. That also helps to kind of pull some of that lymphatic congestion out of the walls of those organs. Doing hot and cold packs on the back of the head. Alternate, start and end with cold, but in between put some hot packs. You can also do this in the shower, having it aimed right there where the back of the head, the occipital region, connects to the top of the neck. And what that will do is open up the lymphatic vessels, helping to drain that area. But you can also pull directly from the respiratory structures. Ear candling opens up the cavities in the tympanic area of the skull. So all of these are wonderful mechanisms to open up those channels because there's so much sinus congestion. I'm not going to say, Tad, whether I think the bowels are more important or less important than the kidneys. I think they're all important. For some people, the weakness is more so in the bowels. And like you said, by looking at a lot of irises, and I see the same thing, bowels are so chronically impacted. I mean, you know, the stomach, the GI tract is very weak when it looks really dark, as it often does. And then you can see a lot of either sulfur or other types of pigments that are indicative that there's a lot of congestion going on in that area. But oftentimes that is also connected to the kidneys. Now, one thing that's interesting when we talk about iridology is that the iris is very similar to the embryological development that we see. So like when when a sperm fertilizes an egg, that first cell called the zygote starts dividing. And then we form this ball of cells called a blastocyst. The ball of cells then starts an invagination process. And the very first thing that forms in humans is our anus. And then the second thing that forms is our mouth. And then those two connect and we have the entire gastrointestinal tract. And budding off of our gastrointestinal tract, every single organ in the body. So we have this embryonic origin that is representative on our iris. So budding off of each iris, or of the bowel ring that just surrounds the pupil, budding off are organs. And so we see that connection embryologically between the bowel wall and every organ. So it could be that there is a bowel weakness just inside of that kidney area on the iris, or that adrenal area, or that hypothalamus area, because all of the organs are connected to the bowel wall. And if that bowel wall is very toxic, if it's letting things be reabsorbed that we're not releasing, that could be the main culprit. So with that said, I can see where Dr. Jensen is coming from, that the bowels are so important. And Dr. Christopher, Dr. Schultz, all of these herbalists do highly stress the bowels. Dr. Morse, though, also stresses the bowels. It's not like he's ignoring them. He's just also bringing to the table the kidneys and the lymphatic system, because it's all important. And we have to strengthen all of these organs when we're doing healing. But that's a great question. Thanks for posting that. I'm transitioning, this is Chris, I'm transitioning to a plant-based diet, wondering if rice and beans are okay, or really just, or ideally just fruits and veggies. Well, you know, if you want to heal and you want to have optimal health, fruits and veggies in a raw state, that's really where it is. Beans, they're kind of a poor combination just innately. You know, a bean is a starch and a protein in one. And I think beans are a little bit better if you can sprout them beforehand and, you know, maybe lightly cook them, but they're not as cleansing, they're not as healing as the raw fruits and veggies. So, you know, it depends. What I would recommend is, sorry, doing a lot of talking, need a little water break. You know, some people that are new to this lifestyle, they do need to transition and go into it slowly. Other people, they're better just jumping right on into it. What I often recommend, especially like if I have a client who has a very chronic issue going on, or a very serious health issue, and, you know, maybe they've gone through all of the allopathic treatments, they just want to try because they have the natural law right to be able to do this. They want to try something different. And they've been eating junk their whole lives. They're coming from a toxic lifestyle, and I know they're really toxic. I might recommend a slower transition, but in other cases, we don't have time to wait. We don't have time for them to transition slowly. So I would say do a weekend, 3 days of nothing but lemon water. And maybe try some dry fasting, but really get that lemon water in, hydrate. And then after 3 days of lemon water, 72 hours of just nothing but lemon water, where you're adding freshly squeezed lemon juice to a good source of water, then start the fruits up. Because by that time, by 3 days, you know, you've done some cleansing. You might want to do maybe a little bit of an enema if you haven't had a bowel movement in a while. This is when I would recommend an enema or a colonic in that case, because you need to get those channels opened, right? And then you can start a healthy herbal protocol with the fruits, the berries, the melons, and the herbs that would be recommended. But, you know, sometimes we just don't have the time, the luxury to transition. We've got serious issues out there for people. Tad, yes, the neural arch reflex, Dr. Jensen talked about this being his greatest discovery. Are you talking about that brain flare that's kind of there, like between the 11 o'clock and the 1 o'clock on the iris? You know, I was reading a lot of Dr. Jensen's work for a while, several years ago, and I can't remember, but I think I remember neural arch reflex, yes. Reflex areas on the iris, by the way, are the areas on the iris associated with specific organs. So that's probably what you're mentioning there. Sarah, I can said it's my stomach making weird noises. Okay. So, you know, you can try, is there pain, Sarah? I mean, is the noise, is it occurring when the stomach's empty, or is it associated with digestion? There's a lot that you know, if you can add to it. I know a little bit more information. If it's painful, though, that's usually excess acids in the stomach wall. Hello, Jason. Tad, everything is connected neurologically, and that is why it's so important to be careful with our emotions. Yeah. The emotions can trigger the neural arch weaknesses Also not just bad foods. Yeah, and that, one thing that I really like at the level 1, and I think Marcy does this at level 2, Marcy usually goes over at either level 1 or level 2, that emotional connection with the neural arch. I really love her presentation on that. So you're correct. I mean, the emotions are very important. And that, this is coming back to how we can take charge of our health. You get into alignment. Your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, when those are all in alignment, you can be very powerful. I mean, that's kind of the holy trinity of how we can use what our intention is for our own body. So if we want to intend a healthy body, you want to make sure you're cleansing physically, that you're doing those actions that are health promoting, but also you want to have good thoughts. You want to be thinking positively. You want to envision your organs cleansing, your whatever organ is problematic, envision that healing. And then emotionally, put love and positive emotions into that as well, because really all three of those on board, you've got a powerful combination of just what you can do yourself to promote healing. All right, Michael, how much lemon water is recommended when drinking those 3 days? I would say as much as you can get in, I've read some, like Dr. Christopher recommending like a gallon of water. I think Dr. Christopher mentions like distilled water with lemon, but we get the water we can get, right? The best water is the water that's in the fruit, but sometimes you just want to really cleanse on just like some regular distilled water or reverse osmosis water or mineral water. If you're lucky enough, like when I used to live up near Seattle, Washington, we had a fresh spring that we could get water from. If you have one of those nearby, great. But maybe up to a gallon a day would be helpful, but just as much as your body needs. Listen to your body, okay? You don't have to overstress it, but listen to your body. So if you need it up to a gallon and that's what your body's calling for, great. But then after that, after those first 3 days, and you go on to like fruits, the berries, and the melons, then you might want to start incorporating some dry fasting. But first, we really need to hydrate. And so and I mentioned just the water by itself because sometimes if we go more slowly with that, if we just jump into the fruits, people have a tendency to fall off the cleanse, and they're not, giving their body that true desire for the food that they really need to keep moving forward. Ellen, what do you think of the new celery juice push? So many have suggested this to help with digestion, but it's not a fruit. It confuses me. Well, celery has a lot of natural sodium in it. So for that reason, it's great. It's cleansing, but really the celery is not as cleansing as the fruit is. There's a lot of different cleanses out there. Everybody has their own cleanse that they do. There's the master cleanse, the master fast, the whatever, the all fruit diet, which we tend to recommend here. And you're going to get some positive results from a lot of these cleanses, mostly because of what you're eliminating, what you're no longer including in your diet. And this is why people do okay on, crazy diets like the paleo diet, which I don't recommend, but they're omitting certain things that are congesting, that are interfering with bodily function, and they see some good things come out of it. But we have to be somewhat discerning. Dr. Morris has been doing this for over almost 50 years now, and where he sees the most healing and where I've seen the most healing and where most of our detoxification specialists have seen the most healing is with the fruits, the berries, and the melons. And when those are used in conjunction with a well thought out herbal protocol and lifestyle changes, healing is inevitable. You really can, with the fruits, the berries, and melons, get the nutrition you need, you're getting the energy you need, and you're getting that bundle of astringent properties to pull that congestion out of those tissue spaces. So I'm sure people do get results on celery juice. It's just not optimal. It's not as good as the fruits, berries, and melons. Tad writes, the neural arch is where the autonomic nerve wreath. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, the autonomic nerve wreath, also called the collarette. That's the little line right outside the nutritive zone of the bowel wall. So you've got the pupil, which is the hole going through the iris, and then you've got the region, the reflex area that represents the stomach and the intestinal tract, and then outside of that there's this little ring, which I've heard it called or referred to as the collarette or the neural reflex arc. Yep, it is that now that I'm saying it fully, the neural reflex arc. Thank you. Yeah, so that's that connection point. You're right. And this is kind of where that connection is with the embryonic bowel to every single organ in the body. Sarah's writing that her stomach is not painful. Well, even if you're hearing weird noises, there's something overactive going on in the stomach. So cleansing is probably going to be beneficial. Some good things for the stomach. Apples are great. Grapes are great. So doing just a week of nothing but apples or grapes, those can be very cleansing. Adding some stomach tea to that, some kidney and bladder, open up those kidneys to get any kind of that congestion out, is going to be helpful. Ellen, that was my instinct. That celery juice was not as cleansing as fruit. Yeah, again, if you're doing nothing but celery and you're coming off of a not so great diet or even a mediocre diet, you're probably going to see some positive results from celery, but fruits and berries and melons are the most cleansing. Okay, so I've been here for a couple of hours and I have to actually teach tomorrow morning. So I'm going to be ending this live Q&A, but I will be back next week at the same time. So next week, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time. I will be here on my channel, and I will be here to answer any of your questions. I know there was one woman, though, that I didn't get to. She had a question about, I'm going to pull her question up because I told her I would read this online. This was somebody that was thinking about taking ISOD this April. She knows somebody that's raw vegan, big fan of fruit, and the blood work is showing that his electrolyte levels of sodium and chloride are off. Or no, wait, hold on a second. He was talking about, I take that back. Let me just read it from the beginning. She has a question for tonight's Q&A. She won't be able to make it to the live viewing, so she thought she tried to reach me by messaging me. So her question is that she was watching a video of some doctor being interviewed. He is a raw vegan, a big fan of fruit. He was talking about the potential dangers of detoxing with fruit, though. One of them being that blood work can show low levels of electrolytes and sodium chloride. How can these have health consequences like dizziness and abnormal heart function? I wonder if that was Dr. Furman. I'm just curious because Dr. Furman is a big fan of fruit. His response to this, for some people, they might need to include vegetables to get those electrolytes. Wondering what my thoughts are on this. So, when the electrolytes are out of whack, when they're imbalanced, that points to an adrenal gland weakness. So my response to that would be we can still do the fruits, get the kidneys on board, get the adrenal glands on board, because the adrenal glands, the only mineral the adrenal glands do not hormonally control is calcium. Calcium is controlled by the thyroid and the parathyroid, but the adrenal glands, they secrete collectively a variety of hormones called mineralocorticoids that are helping to maintain homeostatic levels of all of the other minerals in our body, in our blood especially. So things like aldosterone. And if those adrenal glands are weak, that could cause, imbalances. So you want to strengthen the adrenal glands. You want to cleanse the adrenal glands as you're cleansing every other organ and tissue in the body. And that will prevent those kind of things from happening. So I guess a couple more people chimed in. Thank you. Thank you. You're all very welcome. It was John Kohler interviewing Dr. Dina. I'll have to look and see who Dr. Dina is. I think I've heard of that name, but I'm not sure. A lot of, when I worked with Dr. Furman, we did do blood work. We checked blood work for fluctuating electrolyte levels during water fasting specifically. But with the fruit, you're getting all of those. If you're getting a nice variety of fruit, I mean, even if you're doing 40 days of grapes, you're going to be fine. I mean, it's going to detox you deeply. So I would not be so concerned with that. But if you're doing a detox, use the herbs to help you, to help strengthen all of those organs in your body so that they can help you detox most effectively and get your organs and glands on board so that they can do their job. Tad, thank you so much, Patty. I really love what you do. Thank you for helping us and understand AMP. You are so welcome. You're all very welcome. John Kohler YouTube channel is okay raw. Yeah, I am familiar with John Kohler. I'll have to go back and watch his interview of Dr. Dina. So thank you for recommending that. Maybe I'll give that a watch and I'll have more to say about that next Sunday night. So I need to log off and go to bed soon. I will see you all next Sunday. If you have any questions though, you can please like my Facebook page, Patty Lager ND. You can check out my website. And that's where you can also access my online AMP course. I hope you all have a beautiful day, night, or evening, and I will see you next week. Bye.